Stand By Me, 1986, was once a story of childhood, friendship, and quiet loss. But by 2026, the lives of its cast took far darker turns than anyone imagined. From broken marriages and addiction to endings no one saw coming, the price of youth was painfully high. Join us as we uncover who they really became and honor the legacies they left behind. Wil Wheaton as Gordy LaChance. Wil Wheaton was born on July 29, 1972, in Burbank, California. At 14 years old, he played Gordy LaChance, the sensitive, introverted boy who dreams of becoming a writer, in Stand By Me, 1986. His performance gave the film its emotional spine, grounding the story in grief and quiet intelligence. That role also shaped how audiences would see Wil himself. But behind that fragile on-screen sensitivity was a childhood marked by control and fear. Raised by parents in the entertainment industry, Wheaton has described his father as emotionally abusive and his mother as enabling that abuse, forcing him into auditions from a very young age. Even as Stand By Me opened doors and early success followed, anxiety and insecurity took root early, quietly traveling with him into every new opportunity. As adulthood approached, Wil tried to build the stable family life he never had. In 1999, he married Ann Prince, later adopting her 2 sons at their request. Yet the marriage endured years of strain as Wheaton battled inner turmoil, career instability, and unresolved trauma, relying heavily on Ann's patience and support to keep the relationship intact. Those struggles eventually had names. Wheaton has been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and chronic depression, conditions he directly links to childhood abuse and early fame. He also struggled with alcohol addiction before achieving long-term sobriety, choosing radical honesty over silence and turning his pain into advocacy for mental health awareness. Today, Wil Wheaton is 54 years old and largely retired from on-screen acting, focusing instead on writing, podcasting, hosting, and voice work. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his success today is measured less in money than in control. After a life spent being pushed into roles, his greatest victory may be finally living on his own terms. River Phoenix, as Chris Chambers. River Phoenix was born on August 23, 1970, in Madras, Oregon. At 16 years old, he played Chris Chambers, the brilliant wounded boy trapped by poverty and reputation, in Stand By Me, 1986. His performance became the moral center of the film, turning Chris into a symbol of lost potential and quiet dignity. For many viewers, River didn't just act the role, he embodied it. That depth came from a childhood shaped by instability and trauma. Raised in a constantly moving, impoverished household, Phoenix spent formative years inside the Children of God cult, an experience later linked to severe psychological harm, including sexual abuse at a very young age. When acting success followed Stand By Me, it didn't erase the damage. It only hid it behind growing fame. As his star rose, River's personal life became increasingly fragile. He never married, but his long relationship with Martha Plimpton and later romance with Samantha Mathis revealed a young man desperate for connection, yet overwhelmed by addiction. Those closest to him described a gentle, idealistic soul slowly losing control as substance use intensified. Phoenix battled severe drug addiction, including heroin and cocaine, while trying to maintain the image of a clean living role model. The pressure to appear pure only deepened his isolation. In the early hours of October 31, 1993, he collapsed outside the Viper Room in West Hollywood and was pronounced dead at 1:51 a.m. at just 23 years old from acute multiple drug intoxication. He left behind an estimated $5 million estate and an unfinished career many believe could have defined a generation. His death transformed him into a lasting symbol of lost brilliance. Corey Feldman, as Teddy Duchamp. Corey Feldman was born on July 16, 1971, in Los Angeles, California. At 15 years old, he played Teddy Duchamp, the volatile, fearless boy scarred by an abusive father, in Stand By Me, 1986. His explosive energy gave the film its most unpredictable edge, turning Teddy into both a source of danger and dark humor. That performance cemented Feldman as the embodiment of troubled youth in 1980s cinema. Long before fame, Feldman's childhood was already fractured. Raised by parents struggling with addiction and financial instability, he has repeatedly stated that he was exploited for his earning power and exposed to sexual abuse within Hollywood at a very young age. While early success followed Stand By Me and propelled him through a string of hit films, the damage beneath the surface was already taking hold, quietly shaping his future. As he grew older, Feldman's personal life reflected that instability. He married Vanessa Marcil in 1989, but the relationship collapsed in 1993 under the weight of addiction and chaos. His second marriage to Susie Sprague in 2002 brought the birth of his son, yet ended in a prolonged and bitter divorce finalized in 2014. In 2016, Feldman married Courtney Ann Mitchell, a union that also faced ongoing strain and public turbulence, underscoring how difficult stability remained for him. The root of those struggles lay in long-term trauma. Feldman battled severe cocaine and heroin addiction, alongside PTSD stemming from childhood abuse. He has spoken openly about multiple rehabilitation attempts and years of relapse, choosing later in life to confront both addiction and the culture that enabled it. By turning his pain into activism, he positioned himself as one of the loudest voices exposing abuse in the entertainment industry. Now, Corey Feldman is 55 years old, still active, but marked by a career defined as much by survival as by success. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, earned through films, books, music, and advocacy work, his life stands as a cautionary tale. Jerry O'Connell as Vern Tessio. Jerry O'Connell was born on February 17, 1974, in New York City. At 12 years old, he played Vern Tessio, the anxious, good-hearted boy whose fears often masked quiet loyalty, in Stand By Me, 1986. His performance grounded the film with warmth and relatability, offering balance to its darker characters. Vern became the emotional relief that made the group feel real. Unlike some of his co-stars, O'Connell's childhood was relatively stable, though still shaped by the pressures of working young. Raised in a supportive household, he nevertheless struggled to balance education with early fame, learning quickly that childhood success did not guarantee an easy adulthood. As he grew, his career steadily expanded beyond Stand By Me, allowing him to avoid the sudden collapse that haunted many child actors. Adulthood brought both opportunity and challenge. O'Connell navigated the difficult transition from child star to adult actor, eventually finding long-term success on television while expanding into hosting and voice work. That professional stability mirrored his personal life when he married Rebecca Romijn in 2007, forming a partnership often described as grounded and supportive. Marriage was not without its pressures. O'Connell has acknowledged the strain of demanding schedules and constant public exposure, particularly after the birth of their twin daughters in 2008. Yet unlike many former child actors, he avoided addiction or major health crises, relying instead on structure, education, and adaptability to sustain both family and career. Today, Jerry O'Connell is 52 years old, enjoying one of the most stable post-child star careers of his generation. With an estimated net worth of around $20 million earned through television, hosting, and production, his life reflects a rare outcome. Kiefer Sutherland as Ace Merrill. Kiefer Sutherland was born on December 21, 1966, in London, England. At 19 years old, he played Ace Merrill, the ruthless, manipulative leader of the local bully gang, in Stand By Me, 1986. His menacing presence turned childhood adventure into a genuine confrontation with violence and fear. Ace wasn't just an antagonist. He represented the brutal future waiting beyond innocence. That intensity was shaped early in life. Growing up as the son of legendary actor Donald Sutherland and actress Shirley Douglas, Kiefer spent his childhood moving between Canada and the United States, rarely settling long enough to form lasting friendships. The constant displacement, combined with the shadow of a famous surname, left him feeling isolated and under pressure to prove himself. Acting became both an escape and a burden as his career accelerated through the late 1980s and into major stardom. His personal life, however, struggled to find the same stability. Sutherland married Camelia Cath in 1987, and they had a daughter before divorcing in 1990 amid infidelity and growing personal strain. A second marriage to Kelly Wynn in 1996 ended years later in divorce, marked by emotional distance and unresolved issues. Though later engaged to Cindy Vela, Kiefer's romantic life has often mirrored the turbulence behind his public success. Alcohol addiction became the most damaging constant. Sutherland battled severe alcoholism, leading to multiple high-profile DUI arrests and even jail time, moments that threatened to derail his career entirely. Periods of sobriety alternated with relapse, forcing him to confront the consequences of excess while working under relentless pressure in television and film. By 2026, Kiefer Sutherland is 59 years old, still a major star with a long-running legacy in film and television. With an estimated net worth of around $100 million earned through acting, producing, and music projects, he stands as a survivor of both fame and self-destruction. Casey Siemaszko as Billy Tessio. Casey Siemaszko was born on March 17, 1961 in Chicago, Illinois. At 25 years old, he played Billy Tessio, the volatile older brother of Vern and a peripheral enforcer in the local gang, in Stand By Me, 1986. His presence added a layer of realism to the film's threat. Billy felt less like a villain and more like a warning. Siemaszko's early life was comparatively grounded, raised in Chicago in a disciplined household before training seriously as an actor. Moving to Los Angeles to pursue a career, however, brought long stretches of uncertainty, unemployment, and financial pressure. Even as recognizable roles arrived, including strong performances in the mid to late 1980s, the industry's unpredictability forced him to adapt quickly to survive. As leading roles became scarce, Siemaszko transitioned into supporting characters and stage work, accepting reduced visibility in exchange for continuity. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Siemaszko maintained a private personal life. He married outside the public spotlight and built a family away from Hollywood scrutiny, choosing stability over notoriety. That decision limited his exposure but also shielded him from much of the chaos that consumed other actors of his generation. Today, Casey Siemaszko is 65 years old and largely inactive compared to his peak years. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, accumulated from decades of character roles, his career reflects a different kind of survival. Gary Riley as Charlie Hogan. Gary Riley was born on April 28, 1967, in California, USA. At 19 years old, he played Charlie Hogan, one of the volatile members of Ace Merrill's gang, in Stand By Me, 1986. Charlie's presence reinforced the film's sense of danger, showing how easily teenage cruelty slid into real violence. His role helped ground the story's threats in something frighteningly believable. Before and shortly after Stand By Me, Riley grew up and trained in California, entering Hollywood young with limited family backing to guide his career. He worked steadily through the mid-1980s, appearing in films like Summer School, 1987, and memorable bit roles in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Ruthless People. Yet behind the scenes, the lack of a strong support system made the industry feel isolating rather than empowering. As the decade closed, momentum slowed. Riley found himself auditioning constantly, but landing fewer substantial roles, a common fate for young character actors once studios shifted focus. The frustration of missed opportunities and shrinking visibility gradually pushed him away from acting, even though his face remained familiar to audiences of that era. Unlike many former child and teen actors, Riley's personal life remained relatively stable. He married, built a family, and deliberately stepped back from Hollywood's volatility, choosing consistency over the uncertainty of chasing roles that no longer came easily. Now, Gary Riley is 59 years old and fully retired from acting. With an estimated net worth of around $300,000 earned through residuals and work outside the film industry, his story is a quiet one. Charlie Hogan vanished from the screen decades ago, but Riley survived by walking away, not burning out. Bradley Gregg as Eyeball. Chambers. Bradley Gregg was born on November 8, 1966, in Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. At 19 years old, he played Eyeball Chambers, the menacing older brother of Chris Chambers, in Stand By Me, 1986. His performance added a chilling edge, embodying the idea that small-town violence didn't end with childhood bullies. Eyeball felt like the future the boys feared becoming. Growing up in Hollywood meant early exposure to the industry, but it also meant intense competition and pressure from a young age. Gregg transitioned quickly from child roles into darker, more demanding parts, gaining recognition in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, 1987, and later appearing in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 1989. However, he was often typecast into supporting roles that limited long-term momentum. As the years passed, Gregg felt the emotional weight of that trajectory. The death of close friend and co-star River Phoenix deeply affected him, prompting a gradual withdrawal from acting. Career uncertainty and creative frustration led him to step away from Hollywood, searching for meaning beyond being the guy audiences recognized but never quite knew. His personal life became a stabilizing force. Gregg married Dawn Gregg, and together they raised their children, building a family-centered life that contrasted sharply with his earlier years in the spotlight. Though financial pressure surfaced at times, the marriage endured, even through periods when his acting career stalled. Today, Bradley Gregg is 59 years old, working only selectively in film while focusing on directing, writing, and family life. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, accumulated through acting, production work, and business ventures, his story is one of retreat rather than collapse. Jason Oliver as Vince Desjardins. Jason Oliver was born in the mid-1960s in the United States. At around 20 years old, he played Vince Desjardins, a member of Ace Merrill's gang, in Stand By Me, 1986. Though his screen time was brief, Vince left a lasting impression as the boy who coldly predicts where Ray Brower's body will be found, sharpening the film's sense of menace. That single line helped elevate the gang from background bullies into a genuine threat. Away from the camera, Oliver's early life was relatively ordinary, but entering Hollywood proved far more difficult than expected. He struggled to gain traction in an industry that offered him few opportunities beyond minor roles. After Stand By Me, he appeared sporadically in films like The Wizard, 1989, and Class of 1999, 1990, yet momentum never truly followed. As the years passed, the lack of substantial roles began to define his career more than his performances did. The transition from a recognizable supporting actor to consistent work never materialized, and financial uncertainty became part of his reality. Gradually, Oliver stepped away from acting, choosing stability over the constant rejection of auditions. By 2026, Jason Oliver is around 60 years old and long retired from the entertainment industry. With an estimated net worth of about $200,000 earned through residuals and work outside film, his story reflects a quiet exit. Marshall Bell as Mr. LaChance. Marshall Bell was born on September 28, 1942, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. At 44 years old, he played Mr. LaChance, Gordy's emotionally distant father, in Stand By Me, 1986. His restrained, grief-stricken performance gave the film one of its most painful emotional undercurrents. That quiet cruelty made Gordy's journey feel tragically necessary. Bell's early life was marked by instability and discouragement. Raised in Oklahoma and Colorado, he was repeatedly told he lacked talent, causing him to abandon acting for decades. He served in the Army, studied sociology, and worked as a business consultant before returning to performance in midlife, a detour that made his later success unusually hard-earned. Once he finally broke through, Bell became a reliable character actor, known for physically imposing and morally complex roles. Films like Twins, 1988, and Total Recall, 1990, cemented his reputation, even as age and Hollywood's bias against older actors made leading roles elusive. Still, he worked steadily, turning limitations into longevity. In his personal life, Bell found stability. He married Milena Canonero, the acclaimed costume designer and four-time Oscar winner, and their long-standing marriage grounded him through decades of work. Today, at 84 years old, Marshall Bell remains active, with an estimated net worth of around $5 million, a testament to patience, endurance, and a career that began when most others had already given up. Frances Lee McCain as Mrs. LaChance. Frances Lee McCain was born on July 28, 1944, in York, Pennsylvania. At 42 years old, she played Mrs. LaChance, Gordy's quiet, emotionally restrained mother, in Stand By Me, 1986. Her performance didn't rely on speeches or drama, but on absence and silence, reinforcing the emotional vacuum Gordy grows up in. That restraint subtly deepened the film's theme of neglected childhood grief. Unlike that role, McCain's childhood was relatively stable, yet her early path into acting was demanding and uncertain. Moving between states and later studying philosophy and acting in London, she built her craft slowly, often fighting for space in an industry that favored youth and novelty. By the early 1980s, she became recognizable for maternal roles, appearing in Gremlins, 1984, and Footloose, 1984, parts that required warmth but rarely offered complexity. As her career progressed, Hollywood's gender barriers became harder to ignore. Despite steady work in films like Back to the Future, 1985, McCain was increasingly confined to supportive roles, prompting her to seek deeper fulfillment outside mainstream cinema. She returned to theater, relocated to the Bay Area, and pursued advanced studies in psychology. In her personal life, McCain found stability through a long marriage to Mark Wheeler, grounding her away from industry volatility. By 2026, at 82 years old, she remains creatively active, balancing theater, writing, and mentorship. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, her legacy is one of quiet endurance rather than celebrity noise. Bruce Kirby as Mr. Quidaccio Luo. Bruce Kirby was born on April 28, 1925, in New York City. At 61 years old, he appeared as Mr. Quidaccio Luo, the gruff junkyard owner, in Stand By Me, 1986. Though brief, his scene grounded the boy's journey in adult authority and danger, reminding viewers how small and vulnerable they truly were. It was a classic Kirby moment: minimal screen time, maximum authenticity. Kirby's childhood unfolded under the shadow of the Great Depression, shaping a generation defined by resilience. Entering acting through live television in the 1950s, he built his career patiently, moving between stage, film, and television with little concern for fame. Over decades, he became one of Hollywood's most dependable character actors, appearing in projects like The Muppet Movie, 1979, and countless television classics. As he aged, Kirby faced the quiet challenge of longevity in an industry obsessed with reinvention. Roles became smaller but more respected, and his presence carried a lived-in authority younger actors couldn't fake. Off-screen, his greatest pride was his family, especially his son Bruno Kirby, who followed him into acting. Sadly, Bruce Kirby passed away on January 24, 2021, at the age of 95, due to congestive heart failure. He died peacefully in Los Angeles, closing a career that spanned more than 6 decades. With an estimated net worth of about $1 million, his true inheritance lies in the hundreds of performances that made American film and television feel real. William Bronder as Milo Pressman. William Bronder was born on June 12, 1930, in New York City, New York. At 56 years old, he played Milo Pressman, the hostile junkyard owner, in Stand By Me, 1986. His intimidating presence turned a simple trespass into a moment of real danger. Though brief, the role reinforced the film's constant tension between childhood curiosity and harsh reality. Long before Hollywood, Bronder's childhood was shaped by hardship and uncertainty during the wartime era. He later served at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy and in the 82nd Airborne Division, experiences that hardened his demeanor and quietly informed the working-class toughness he would bring to the screen. When he entered acting in the 1960s, he carried that lived-in realism with him, slowly building credibility rather than chasing stardom. As his career unfolded, Bronder became a familiar face in character roles, often cast as gruff, unsympathetic men. Alongside Stand By Me, he appeared in films like Cannery Row, 1982, and later Return to Me, 2000, while maintaining a steady presence across dozens of television series. He never broke into leading roles, but reliability kept him working for decades. Away from the camera, Bronder's personal life was notably stable. He married Tona Dodd in 1964, and their marriage endured for more than 50 years until his death. Together, they raised their children far from Hollywood drama, and Bronder found quiet joy in hobbies like competitive pigeon racing, where he earned Hall of Fame recognition. Tragically, William Bronder passed away on May 6, 2015, in Northridge, Los Angeles, at the age of 84. His cause of death was not publicly disclosed. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, his legacy was never about wealth or fame, but about consistency, a lifetime of honest performances that made films feel lived in and real. John Cusack as Denny LaChance. John Cusack was born on June 28, 1966, in Evanston, Illinois. At 20 years old, he played Denny LaChance, Gordy's older brother, in Stand By Me, 1986. Though Denny appears only briefly, his death is the emotional wound that drives the entire story, shaping Gordy's guilt, silence, and longing. Behind that role was a childhood defined by noise and pressure. Raised in a crowded Irish Catholic family in Chicago, surrounded by siblings who were also performers, Cusack grew up fighting for space and identity. Acting became both an escape and a proving ground, and by his late teens he was already navigating fame while still trying to understand who he was beyond the screen. As he matured, Cusack's career exploded but refused to follow a predictable path. Films like Say Anything, 1989, and Grosse Pointe Blank, 1997, cemented his status as a generational voice, yet his outspoken political views often complicated studio relationships. That tension became a defining thread in his professional life. Cusack's personal life took a very different shape. Despite decades in Hollywood and numerous high-profile relationships, he never married. He has spoken openly about valuing independence and privacy, suggesting that emotional distance, much like Gordy's, became a form of self-protection rather than loneliness. Today, John Cusack is 60 years old and still active, choosing projects carefully while remaining a visible cultural and political voice. With an estimated net worth of around $50 million, his legacy isn't just financial. It's the image of an actor who never separated art from conscience, even when it cost him comfort or popularity. Nearly 4 decades have passed since Stand By Me first captured the pain, innocence, and quiet heartbreak of growing up. Some of the cast went on to fame, Others faded into silence, and a few were lost far too soon. But each of them left a mark that time can't erase. Which cast member's journey surprised you the most? And whose story hit you the hardest? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more deep, emotional, then and now stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.